So if we have the knowledge without the experience, right, it's theory. It's great to know, but we're not applying it. If we have the experience without the knowledge, it's trial and error. Like, why isn't this thing working? Well,
Right.
maybe because we're just kind of like shooting darts at the wall, hoping that something sticks, right?
Mhm.
So, but when we get the two of those working together, right, that's where the magic happens.
Hi, and welcome to Beyond Empty Nest. I'm your host, Jody Silverman, speaker, mentor, and Chief Dare Officer at Moms Who Dare. Every Thursday, I'll share stories of midlife transformation, happiness tips, and dare you to see the opportunities waiting for you so that you can make this next chapter even better than the last. If you're ready to dare, I'm ready to dare with you. Let's get into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Empty Nest. Today, we'll uncover the secrets to achieving true financial confidence, discuss how to prepare for life's unexpected turns, like death, divorce, or sudden changes, and share invaluable advice for women who are new to navigating and managing their finances. Join us, my guest, Rhonda Noordyk, as we empower you to take charge of your financial future with clarity and confidence. Welcome, Rhonda. That just sounds like lovely to have clarity and confidence over my financial future. So
Right?
welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. It's an important conversation. Women in finances, it's becoming more and more talked about publicly. So when I was introduced to you, I knew that I wanted to bring this, especially during times of transition. Especially. So before we dive into it, a little bit more about Rhonda, and then Rhonda, you're going to share your story. But Rhonda is a well-respected divorce and financial strategist. She is known internationally for her work in pioneering a path for women to navigate through the financial aspects of the divorce process. As a strategist, Rhonda helps her clients determine their next financial move. All super important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting, right? Because I think, one of the reasons that I got into this work, it was not because I went through divorce. It was really because I saw women that were coming through my doors when I worked in the financial industry that were like, Rhonda, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what's going on. I'm feeling unsettled. I really want to be educated about the finances, but I don't even know where to start. And oh, by the way, my husband says we've got a guy. What does that even mean, right? Um, and which means, don't ask me any more
My husband
questions.
says we've got a guy. That, you know what? You're right. That is a common statement.
So frustrating at the end of the day, right? Because, women, and again, people in general, right? You either move toward things that bring you pleasure or away from things that bring you pain. And when you're in the day to day and everything's just kind of like status quo, we're not usually prompted to make changes, even if we maybe want to. And so, really, at the end of the day, the key thing was how do we help women? And we would do these events and standing room only, and women would leave there and they're like, oh, this is really great. And then they would never really take action with it because, again, they get back and, it gets poo pooed or, dismissed or whatever. So in 2014, I found myself in my office thinking, okay, what do I want my business to look like 5 years from now? And I can continue on this path and, continue to help people. But my business model, when you're in the financial industry, while you can grow it, it's going to look pretty similar 5 years upon 5 years upon 5 years.
Mhm.
And so that question was scary because you're like, okay, if I really want to do what I feel like I'm called to do and take a leap of faith, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And I decided in September of 2024 to leave the financial industry. And I opened what was known as and is currently known as the Women's Financial Wellness Center because there was a physical location and we would host women's events and do workshops and do one-on-one meetings with the goal of creating a safe space for women to be able to ask questions and navigate through life's challenges. In the first year, because we were still, meeting in person, we had 300 people in the first year that came through our doors. I mean, it was a lot of people, a
Yeah.
lot of women that we were able to touch and impact their lives for, regarding the financial aspect. And as time went on, I began to refine my mission even further to really focus on, originally it was going to be divorced and widowed women. But then what happened was had been helping a few widows, but the majority of the people that I was helping were going through divorce. And it just was like supply and demand, right? There's this huge demand, and how do I help kind of be the solution to what I'm experiencing? And so I really started to lean into helping women that were going through divorce. And today, it's exclusively what I do. Yeah. People will often say, Rhonda, do you work with men? I'm like, listen, I don't hate men, right? Men need help too. But I'm not going to be the person that helps them, because I'm one person and I'm super passionate about helping the women. So somebody else will have to, plant their flag and help the guys. And since that time, right, over the last 10 years, there have been more people that have stepped up and are helping the men. But when I started, nobody was traditionally officially helping them.
Rhonda, it's funny. I'm smiling with you. For those of you that are listening, we do have a YouTube channel. You can watch us if you want to say hi and really like see the faces behind the voices. But it's funny because I have a lot of people who say to me, because my community is Moms Who Dare. I support moms, midlife women and moms alike, and specifically navigating life transitions like empty nest, specifically. And I've had over the years numerous women say, well, what about the husbands? What about dads? What about dads? And I say the same thing you said. I love dads. My husband's an amazing dad. And yet, let's go find a dad support group, because I'm helping the women. And the truth be told, women open up more in all women groups. So yeah. I get it. And since then, there are father focused groups out there now. So yeah. I understand that. I understand. Yeah. And I love how you shared the story that, you paid attention and you saw like the women and divorce, there was like a big issue going on there, and lack of education around their finances, which I think is normal. It's not and we shouldn't shame anybody, because I think it's very common. It's common. Look, even me, I live with a CPA. You think I want to take over the finances when I live with a CPA? Oh, heck no. Oh, hell no. No, I don't. But I learned from my mom, actually. She said, you can let him pay the bills and do everything. You're going to be doing 90% of everything. Just know what's happening. Just know where things are. So like, I know where our money is. Yeah. I know what our investments are. We talk monthly, quarterly about any changes, or if there's new investments, we talk, but that's not always the case.
Yeah.
It's not always the case. So So I love the whole name, Women's Wellness Financial Center. And now I'm assuming, are you still meeting in person as well as virtually, or is it all virtual?
No, we really are doing primarily virtual.
Okay.
Some local folks I'll sometimes meet with, I still do have a physical location. But it looks different, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when I started my business, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's plenty of divorces happening here in the Midwest that, I can help people. And we were meeting in person for everything. And then I launched my podcast called Disrupting Divorce, and I had clients that were reaching out from all over the country, and in fact, all over the world. I thought, what, there's got to be an opportunity for us to do this. And I was hesitant at first, because I'm like, gosh, am I still going to be able to have this like connection and feel like this, warmth for my clients? And are they going to feel my warmth through the Zoom? And at the end of the day, it works. I mean, it's been awesome. Yeah. And it's allowed me to scale my business and reach more people. And we were well positioned, when COVID happened, we were already starting to move in the direction of doing virtual sessions. Okay. So we were well positioned to make that transition. And that first year, my business grew by 120%, because of all the people that were actually filing for divorce in the midst of COVID, because they're like, I mean, it just put a spotlight.
Oh, right? It absolutely did. Yeah. You couldn't leave the home and get away and bury your head in the sand for what wasn't working anymore. No.
Right.
Wow.
So that was an interesting time, but I'm grateful for the virtual.
Yeah.
Because it does allow me to be able to help more people. I'm not spending so much time in the car. Although when I do go out for meetings or things like that, I'm like, I kind of do miss it actually.
Yes.
I miss my crank the tunes or listen to the podcast. You're like, oh, that's right. I haven't really had that like mental transition time from point A to point B that we had the opportunity to do when we were commuting.
I understand that too. I do. I got really comfortable and used to the virtual. It allowed us through Moms Be There to reach more moms and have more connects when people were feeling very lonely and alone. Just have mom time, from 7 to 8 o'clock at night every Tuesday. And yet, when I started going out and meeting up with people for coffee again, I'm like, wow, I miss this. I missed it. But so you have to find the balance in everything.
That's right.
In
That's
everything.
right.
Yeah. All right. So our title today, Money Matters in Midlife and How to Understand It Better. And I think you have a formula. Like we want to talk about, you talk about having a formula for financial confidence. And I love that phrase, financial confidence. So let's talk into that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So the formula for financial confidence is knowledge plus experience.
Okay.
And so if we have the knowledge without the experience, right, it's theory. It's great to know, but we're not applying it. If we have the experience without the knowledge, it's trial and error. Like, why isn't this thing working? Well, maybe because we're just kind of like shooting darts at the wall, hoping that something sticks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but when we get the two of those working together, right, that's where the magic happens. And it's been cool to see, particularly for women that are in a spot of transition, right? You have an opportunity to lean into a situation that is less than ideal, that is overwhelming, that's emotional, that's sad, that's grief stricken, all the things. And yet it can be transformational if we allow it to be on multiple levels, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, and of course, my area of focus, financially, right? But this whole formula of confidence came out of a study. So there's, it's research based. And Prudential did a study back in 2000. And people might say, oh, Rhonda, that seems so outdated. I mean, that's like, 20, almost 25 years ago. But here's the thing. So they did it as a longitudinal study. And it was right when I was starting in the financial industry. And I was like, gosh, can I get my hands on? I mean, I read so many books and read studies and talked to people. I mean, it just was like, gathering information. But the study really dove into the attitudes and beliefs about money and the impact that women have, and the fact that while they might be involved in some of the day-to-day purchases or decision making, once they got out of that day-to-day role, the bigger picture, the investments, the insurance, the benefits, that became fuzzy. Which again, that's part of the reason why I think, when we're not going through a time of transition, we're like, it's working, but as we have to deal with some of those other things, and it becomes clear that we don't know as much as we thought we did, or maybe we didn't have as good of a pulse on it, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So then they did another study back in 2010, and it was a longitudinal study, which basically means they did the same study 10 years later to see if there was a difference.
Oh.
And there really wasn't a change.
Oh.
Now, we could argue that there's been another 15 years and there could be but from my work, and this is all I do all day, right? I wouldn't say we've seen this major transformation related to women's attitudes about money. A, because it takes time. And B, we have to remember, and I've been saying this stat for a long time, and now we're starting to see it more on social media and stuff like that, is, hey, we have to remember, we as women couldn't take out a loan or a credit card, right, until the late 70s. So if we had it modeled by our parents, right, that's like we're finally kind of getting through that, where we're like, oh, that's right. Well, I don't have to be afraid of debt if it's used properly. Or, what are some of those attitudes and beliefs that have been carried down from generations that might be impacting us? And oh, by the way, if we've been married for the last 20 or 30 years, we've been in this, dynamic as well. So all of a sudden you're like, 20 or 30 years have passed. I haven't really had to go get a loan on my own. I can do that. I feel afraid. Like,
I never thought of it like that in terms of the study, and why, even though the study was done 20 years ago, it's relevant today. I never even thought of that. I like what you said, something though, that triggered a little emotion, that you don't have to be afraid of debt. It depending on like the type of debt, like not all debt is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I learned a lot from my husband because I would bury my head in my sand in the sand with the numbers of my business up until, and I'm married to a CPA. Let me fall. God bless him. He was so good.
Mhm.
Up until 3 years ago. And now I look at my numbers every day. But I like the knowledge, the formula of knowledge plus
Yeah,
experience. That makes sense. That makes sense. So if you can gain the knowledge along with experience, that's how you can boost your confidence. It could just be a little piece of knowledge, a little bit of experience with
that's
that
right.
knowledge,
That's
a
right.
little bit more confidence, a
That's
little, and
right.
keep building on it.
That's exactly right.
I
That's
like that.
exactly right.
I
And
like
and it makes it a little bit more manageable,
that.
right?
Mhm.
But we have to be intentional because it isn't something that just automatically happens. Um, the one story that I was thinking of as I was talking about the debt, because people might say, well, Rhonda, what are you saying about this? And I think, the key thing is, like for me, as I'm working with women that are going through divorce, right? A lot of times there's a lot of fear around debt. And I get that, right? But where is that stemming from? Where is it coming from, right? And sometimes one party is using the fact that somebody doesn't have immediate access to money as a way to control them. So sometimes we have to unlock or tap into a little bit of debt to get some freedom. Okay. But this brings me back to a story. So I started my business, as I mentioned, and a couple years in, I had the opportunity to consider buying an office space. Well, this was kind of cool. I'd never done anything like this before. And the way that it worked was my building where I was leasing an office. Also, it was condoized. You could purchase an office in there. So it was kind of weird. It was like a business condo transaction. The mortgage people were like, "How do we draft up the paperwork?" Okay, because it was interesting, right? But I had the ability to actually purchase an office suite in that space. Well, I had the opportunity to take some people through there before I actually purchased, and kept a really small group because I didn't want to hear the noise. Um, and I brought a woman through, and we were standing in the middle of there was a conference room. This was really cool space, 2,000 square feet of space that actually would hold up to 100 people for us to do live events
Wow.
with a stage, and it was cool. And then we had some private offices on the other side. But we're standing in the middle of this big giant room, and all of a sudden she's like, "Rhonda, I don't feel good." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she said, just the thought of taking on this debt creates so much anxiety for me. And I was like, "Really? Tell me more." And she said, "Well, Rhonda," she said, "I grew up with my parents who owned a business, and it was kind of feast or famine. They would make a lot of money or the car would be repossessed. And my mom and I were shopping, and we came out and our car was gone. Or, oh, we'd be living in a house and all of a sudden then we claim bankruptcy and we'd lose our house." Like it was just, I mean, you talk about the extremes, right?
Right.
And I said, "Well, no wonder, right? I mean, it makes sense why you would feel anxiety about this." But I said, "The good news for you is you don't have to take on the debt. I'm taking on the debt. But if you'd like to rent from me, you certainly could do that because I have available office space." Now, here's the thing with that. Why do I say the debt piece to bring this full circle? I thought, because I got an SBA loan, I went through this whole thing. It was a great like women's empowerment thing. I went to the initial meeting to even learn about potentially purchasing the space. I went by myself. I didn't tell a single soul that I was going, put on more deodorant. Like, I mean, I was in my early 30s. I didn't really know exactly. I just knew like, okay, we're going to go, we're going to ask questions. And I just kept saying, I'll make really good, I can make a swift decision when I have all of the information. Thank you so much. I need to do a little research, whatever. Because they were trying to bully me into just signing. And I didn't do it. So long story short, right? I thought we would be in there, got an SBA loan, went through all that. At the closing, all my male colleagues were like giving me fist bumps, like, "Rhonda, great job." And I was like, "Yeah, that was a good job." I didn't know what I was doing. I just surrounded myself with smart people and asked really good questions, and we got her done. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was like one of the biggest confident boosters, right? Because
Yeah.
I would gain a little knowledge and I'd get a little experience. I gain a little knowledge, all of a sudden you're like, well, suddenly now, right? Like this is amazing. So I thought I would have that space for a long time. We bought it as an investment with the expectation that we would be holding it for a long time. And 3 years in, actually before COVID. I was looking at simplifying my life. We were moving our family, moving my office closer in proximity. And so I was going to sell my office. And I sold my office and I sold it for cash. But here's the thing, I also had two equity partners, two small equity partners. They were friends of mine who believed in me, came to the table with cash so we could get the deal closed. And it was right before COVID. So I sold my business, my office space in March. Well, we know what happened in March
Yes.
2020. And at the end of the day, I had the opportunity to give my friends an equity check as both of them, their businesses had been flatlined during COVID.
Wow.
And I had the ability at that point, right? I made a profit on that space. And why do I say that? Because if I hadn't taken the risk, if I hadn't taken on the debt, I wouldn't have had an asset to sell and I wouldn't have made money and I wouldn't have been able to share that with my friends at a really critical time.
Yeah.
Now, could it have gone sideways? We can, Rhonda, you could have lost money. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
But we have to look at what's the risk and what's the potential reward, do our research, do our education, and then there is an aspect of taking a leap of faith.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing it. And I also love that you also shared that you also you surrounded yourself by people who knew stuff, maybe knew things you didn't know. I had this, and that's important. Like you knew what you knew, and you were, you were digging up the confidence to take that risk, and you took it, and yet you still. I think it's very important. I spoke with somebody recently on the show, and she left her career, corporate career, to become a filmmaker. She knew nothing about making a film, but she said the beauty of it, she was in her 60s, was that in her 60s, she knew what she didn't know. So she had to surround herself with people who knew what she didn't know. It's know what you don't know and find people who can either teach it to you, share it with you, or support you behind the scenes with it.
Yeah.
And that's important. So I love that story. I love that story. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to be inspired by it as well.
Yeah. And again, I think at the end of the day, right? I mean, we have to, as women, put ourselves in those situations that are uncomfortable. And like you were saying with your husband, right, who is a CPA, my husband's a financial advisor, right? He afforded me that opportunity to do it. Because at one point in the midst of the negotiations, he said to me, Rhonda, do you want me to come to the meeting? And I said, no. I need you to coach me behind the scenes and we need to have a conversation, but I need to go as a unified front or I give away my power.
Yeah.
And that would be my encouragement. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it isn't, hey, do you stay, you go, you get divorced, whatever. At the end of the day, I want women to be empowered. I want them to be able to have the confidence to lean into the difficult conversations. But it's okay for you to ask questions. I mean, one of the things that I said to pretty much everybody during that period of time when we were doing that commercial transaction was, okay, help me understand, right, why that's important. Help me understand that concept. Help me. And guess what? Everybody was like, I get to share my knowledge with you and look super smart.
Yes,
they were like they would just generously dump information on me.
Yeah, no, but yes, and it's not a weakness not to understand.
No.
You have to have the confidence and to ask. And the person who doesn't answer you and makes you feel badly about it, then you know you're doing business with the wrong person.
That's right.
Right.
1,000%.
So love that story. I want to move through the next couple points.
Yep.
Because I think this is all, I mean, we could talk for we could do like a whole series on this, but all right, so let's talk about transitions such as divorce. And there's death, there's divorce, there's all different transitions. But is there a way that somebody listening can start to prepare for the unexpected?
Yeah. I think the first thing, and this might sound super simple, right, is we just have to decide. We have to make the decision that we're going to get our stuff organized, that we're going to start asking questions. I think people naturally kind of do that around tax time, but you don't have to wait till tax time. You don't have to wait till the end of the year. Try to get organized, get an idea of what you have coming in or what's going out. putting together some kind of a budget. There's some great tools out there now, platforms and technology
Yeah.
that can help, aggregate that data and help people with that. One that I have started to explore that I really like is called Monarch Money. And Monarch Money, so for many, many years, I would refer people or encourage people to use Mint. Mint was around forever. Well, we got notice one day that Mint was going bye-bye, and I'm like, now what? I mean, I didn't give people a laundry list of 10 budgeting tools.
That was it.
One, right? And so Monarch actually was offering people that were using Mint a really great sweet discount to come over, and they're robust and they're visual and you can connect it, and it's great. So if people are looking for a tool, I would encourage you to check that out.
I like that. Okay.
Right. So that's, I mean, the budgeting, the organizing, and one of the organizations that I have participated in over the years, and I've been on their podcast, is called Dow Janes. And
Dow Janes.
I know, isn't it cute?
Yes.
They focus on empowering women about money. And one of the things that they shared with me, because I just want to make sure I give them credit, is something called a ritual, like a money ritual. And so what they encourage people to do is, hey, listen, if you're going to be sitting down and going through your finances like you're doing, right, every day, well, grab your favorite beverage, light a candle, turn on, make it, turn on Pandora and turn on some jazz music and make it fun. And so I've started encouraging my clients to do that. And they're like, Rhonda, it felt a little bougie. Like I was I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, go for bougie. Oh, I love that. I'm making a decision. I talk about the first step in creating your daring life. Decide you're worth it. Decide you're ready. So decide to get started in just little steps of organizing. And I love the money ritual. Love that. Thank you. That is like, I like asterixing that, and I wrote that down. I said decide, maybe a money ritual, check out the resources, and then all right. So because you don't know what life's going to throw at you. So just like anything, it's like I tell my children, don't put off to tomorrow what you can do today, because like when I had a presentation to prepare for, I prepare well in advance, because the day before something could happen.
Yep.
And then I can't practice. Okay. So what about maybe your top 1 to 3 bits of advice? We'll wrap it up with this. For women who have never been involved or handled their finances. Well, I guess that would also be decide and get involved. But
yeah,
what else would you share with somebody like a woman who has never even been involved or handled it at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, there's a couple things really simply. One is kind of to your point, make sure that you've got access to information and passwords. Make sure you know where things are. That is huge. The second thing is it's okay for you to open up an account in your name or get a credit card, right? I mean, you can have stuff in your own name, and it doesn't have to be scary and overwhelming. Don't be afraid to have the tough conversations. Hey, help me understand where is our stuff and what do we have, and can we jot stuff down, and just so that you have it in case you need it. And the tough conversations are never easy, but it is super important. So.
But the way you started off the question, you said that, and you started your questions off like that in your negotiation with your office space. There's nothing confrontational about it. There's nothing accusatory about, help me understand. I really want to understand better. Yep. I want to be informed and educated. Help me understand.
Yep.
There's nothing complicated about that. There's no underlying motive other than I really just want to understand, and who can argue with understanding? and if there is, then that's a red flag. And
exactly.
Reach out to Rhonda. I love that. Have access and have knowledge, and then have tough conversations. I had a tough conversation. I'm the one who brought it up to my husband that financially things just were like feeling really heavy, and he knew it. I knew it. Neither one of us was saying, we were taking the burden of guilt and shame on ourselves. And we had this conversation, and everything just started to flow really well.
Yeah.
So break the ice. All right. So knowledge and experience is your formula. Start a little bit of each, combining both of them. Decide. Knowledge is part of knowledge is having access and knowing where things are. And I love your the suggestion of opening your own account. Opening your own account. I like that. I know a few of my friends have their own account, and what they put in there, it's theirs. They feel good about it. Doesn't matter how much is in there. They just know they have their own
Yeah.
stash, so to speak. So yeah,
Yeah.
love that. All right. You also have you also have a book.
I do.
You have a book that came out in the fall. So tell everybody about the book, and we'll
Yes.
link it in the show notes below so they can get it. But tell them about the book. What's it called?
Yeah, so it's called Bold Beginnings. And Bold Beginnings came out of just really wanting to share a little glimpse into my money story. And then we take the word confidence, because I'm a big acronym person. It's the educator slash,
Yeah.
just love it. Take the acronym confidence, and each of the letters for confidence goes through a little exercise, a journaling opportunity, and a little story, and it's intended to be lighter. I mean, it's impactful, but it's lighter. This thing started out as a 10-chapter book, and I was like, this is way too heavy. Okay, so we made it smaller, we made it shorter. It's less than 100 pages. It's small enough that you can throw it in your purse. And in between stuff, you can just be, some great questions that you can be thinking about pondering. And there are also some QR codes in there. So if people are like, yeah, I need to get a budget in order, great. Click on the QR code and it'll take you to our budget template. And there's some interactive things there too. So I'm just really excited about the tool. We launched it with great success, and I'm just looking forward to continuing to help empower people. I would say it's not really a read cover to cover. I mean, it is, you do it in order, but it's interactive journal, and it's $10. So,
$10, less than 100 pages. You took
That's
complete overwhelm off the table.
That's right.
To something that's very overwhelming, a topic that's overwhelming to women. You're giving them a resource that's not overwhelming and easy to manage and carry around with them. I love that. I love that. And so if there's, what's next, right? So get the resource. It's linked below in the show notes. There's also a link to your website. So for any offering that you have. So Rhonda has other offerings, ways you can work with her. But there's a dare, because we never end. No guest gets out of Beyond Empty Nest without a dare.
Right.
I love your dare. So share with everybody what their dare is.
Yes. So the dare is for you to be able to have one very difficult, what would be considered a difficult money conversation, and reach out to somebody who can help hold you accountable. And I'll give you a really quick example. I knew I needed to have a conversation with my parents about estate planning, about end of life planning. I didn't want to have it. I had a friend who said, hey, when are you going to do that by? I said, I'm going to do that by my birthday. And they said, okay, great. So guess what? On my birthday, they texted me and said, hey, have you had the conversation? I said, no, but we're having it today.
That's a good friend.
It is a good friend, right? What I said was, tell me what your wishes are so that I know. And it was kind of one of those things where, like, I don't really want to have this conversation, so we're just going to have it. And then I said to them, and by the way, if I happen to go before you, I don't want to be cremated. Okay, bye. Like, it just was like, you just have to say this quick, like,
Okay.
But that would be my suggestion. Whatever it is for them, that they can have that tough conversation.
I love that. Your dare is to have a difficult money conversation with somebody in your family. I love that one about the parents, because you know what? A lot of the women who listen, our audience, we're caring for our aging parents now. And not everybody likes to think about end of life. And the closer they get to end of life, the less they want to think about it. So that's a really good one. So dare to have a difficult money conversation with somebody in your life, and tell somebody to hold you accountable for it. I love that friend of yours. Good friend. All right, everybody. Rhonda, thank you so much for this conversation. I mean, there's so much more to have. I can't wait. Remember, if you want to connect with Rhonda, check the show notes below. She's a wealth of information, value of information and support for women navigating life transitions, specifically divorce. You just gave great tips. I love this. I love it all. And you have a podcast too.
I do, called Disrupting Divorce.
The what?
Disrupting Divorce.
Disrupting Divorce. Right. So there you go. Not only can you find Rhonda on her website and on social media, you can listen to her podcast, Disrupting Divorce. I love that. for even more advice. That's what I love about my guests. All my guests are doing brilliant things. That's why I have you here, to bring your brilliance, and you brought your brilliance. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, you know what I'm going to say now. What was the one takeaway from this episode? My purpose and my mission for starting Beyond Empty Nest was to bring on guests and allow you to get one thing from each and every guest, one strategy, one tip, one tool, one light bulb. Oh my gosh. Yes, that's what I needed to hear. Moment. What was it from Rhonda? Let us know. Let Rhonda know. Let me know. Send me a message. I'll forward it to Rhonda. And if you're really daring, type it out in a review and let us know your comments. A review is just a fancy word for comments. Don't get caught up in a review. And remember that next week there'll be another episode of Beyond Empty Nest waiting for you. We have well over 70 episodes, so start binging. And as I always say, dare on. If you've enjoyed this episode of Beyond Empty Nest, head over to jodysilverman.com for full show notes and resources. But wait, before you leave, I have a question. Are you happy in midlife? Take the Midlife Happiness Quiz today and discover your personal happiness score. Not only will you uncover where you stand on the Midlife Happiness Scale, you'll also get 2 free tools to help raise it even during difficult and challenging times, leaving you feeling confident and happy from the inside out. It's time to shift your mindset from victim to victor and start boosting your happiness today. Ready to unlock your next chapter of joy? Click the link in our show notes to get started now, because happiness is an inside job and you deserve to feel happy. Dare on.